butterfly effect, a name and concept formulated by American meteorologist and mathematician Edward Norton Lorenz in the 1960s, is the theory that one small change in the starting condition of an event, such as the flutter of an innocent butterfly soaring through the sky, can have a dramatic effect on the outcome of an event, like cause a tornado on the other side of the world, or less drastic, cause a plane to experience turbulence. Edward first popularized the butterfly effect after running weather forecasts through a computer using precise variables, and realizing that just a minute alteration of any given calculation, such as wind speed, temperature, or humidity, caused a dramatic influence of the following 2 months' worth of simulated weather predictions. But this is by no means just the case with the weather, but every single event, thought, and outcome ever to have happened. This is why you did not read the title wrong, and I did not get you with clickbait. This video will have an impact on the outcome of your life in ways you probably never thought until you learn about the butterfly effect. So how can we relate and physically see this? Well, like I said, every single event in reality is the result of a past action. But there are some examples that will reminisce with all of us, because the action started out so small, yet had such a devastating or positive outcome on all of our lives. Let's take a look at a few of those examples. World War I was an event that changed the course of all of our lives, but what if World War I never took place? Well, that in theory could be equally as damaging, because another more devastating war may have broken out, but just what if? Well, it's been theorized that if somehow a war did not happen, there of course would have been no World War II, no Hitler rising to power, no 60+ million deaths, and fast forward many years, theory suggests there would be no tension with the Middle East, no Taliban, and no Al-Qaeda, just to name a few. But many say World War I was destined to happen, and they're probably right. World War I was a combination of many things, but it can be narrowed down to one small event that, if altered, could have changed its course entirely. And that was the wrong turn and the stalling of a car that was carrying the Archduke of Austria, Franz Ferdinand. You see, on the morning of June the 28th, 1914, Franz's car was attacked with a grenade, which failed to hit its target, but instead injured passengers of the car behind. Later that day, Franz wanted to visit those wounded by the blast, and whilst en route, the driver of his car made a wrong turn down a street. Standing outside a cafe on this very street was 19-year-old Serbian Gavrilo Princip, one of the men involved in the attack on Franz that morning. He spotted the car had stalled whilst trying to turn around in the road, ran over and shot Franz and his wife dead. If not for the wrong turn made by Franz's car, he would not have been shot. If he had not been shot, Austria-Hungary would not have declared war on the home country of the man who shot him, which caused Germany to declare war on Russia, followed by France and Belgium, causing the UK to declare war on Germany, starting World War I. Had Franz not been assassinated, World War I would never have happened that way. It may not have been prevented, but it certainly would have started differently, potentially changing its outcome. All because a car took a wrong turn and stalled in the middle of the road. Whilst on the subject of world wars, you may have heard before that one pull of the trigger could have prevented World War II and the death of over 60 million people. Henry Tandy, a British soldier, allegedly bumped into Adolf Hitler in a French village in 1918, when a wounded Hitler walked into his line of fire, but Henry decided against shooting him, before a young Adolf nodded at him and walked away. Had he shot him, Adolf would not have been the driving force behind World War II, and it's anyone's guess what would have happened. World War II would have surely been different, and it may or may not have started, which may have been for better or for worse, because that would have had a knock-on effect on your ancestors who may never had met because of the fact World War II never took place, or had a different outcome, thus resulting in you never being born. But think about this, if Henry had pulled the trigger, although a war may have started, 60 million people may not have died. So just think, out of those 60 million who died, they could have gone on to have children, some of which could have been the next Einsteins or world-changing visionaries. All because one man decided against pulling the trigger. This one is interesting and is quite popular, because if JFK had not been assassinated, who knows what the outcome that would have had on the United States. Well, what if it could be traced back to when he was around 20 years old, that if he had chose to do something different on one certain day, he would not have been killed all those years later. You see, in 1940, 23 years before he was assassinated, he had an accident whilst playing sports, which is thought to be the driving force behind his never-ending struggle with back pain. If not for the back pain, he would not have worn a back brace. If he had not been wearing a back brace on the day he was assassinated, he would have slumped or fallen after the first non-fatal shot hit him. But instead, he stayed upright because of his back brace, allowing his body to be positioned perfectly for a second shot. Many experts have all agreed, if not for the back brace that was the result of years of lower back pain fueled from this sporting accident many years previously, JFK would have been able to duck out the way after the first shot, and the second fatal shot wouldn't have been feasible. Take the handful of people who were late for work on the morning of 9/11, or the fact that Seth MacFarlane missed his flight because he was drunk the night before, preventing him being killed that day, which would have been the end of Family Guy, and the millions of hours spent by people watching that show would have been spent doing something else, which would have resulted in a different outcome for those people. Take Elise O'Kane, a United Airlines flight attendant who typed her flight schedule incorrect into the airline's computer system before 9/11, which in turn led to her not being on her original scheduled flight 175. Take the fact the US Space Shuttle's two side thruster rockets had to be made a smaller size due to the fact they passed through many tunnels during transport. Tunnels which were made 2,000 years ago and were built at the time to just fit the width of two horses carrying a chariot. As someone put it, one of the most complicated and groundbreaking pieces of machinery in history had to be designed to fit around a decision made 2,000 years ago. Take this and the hundreds of personal scenarios you can think of relating to events that happened in your life, and you wonder how things could have been different, for better or for worse, if one little piece was taken away. If my parents had never met, I would never have been born. If I was never born, the 3,200 plus years that has been spent watching my videos by millions of people, which has literally changed the outcome of the world in some way or another, would never have happened. Sure, everyone would have done other things in that time, or watched other videos, but because it would have been different, maybe less or more time spent watching, different conversations with people or different thoughts depending on which video you've watched, a different outcome would result. Now, this is a question I do often ask myself. I wonder if by someone sitting and watching one of my videos, that prevented them from maybe going outside and getting into trouble, or that maybe those 5 minutes spent watching one of my videos or anyone else's video meant they had something in common with a person that led to them dating and potentially starting a family down the line. Now, I am not the cause of that or taking any credit for a scenario like that, but we are all here to serve a purpose one way or another, and we all seem to shape each other's lives a lot more than we think. And when you learn more about this, you will soon come to realise, as I explained, why the title of this video is not clickbait. The minutes you have spent watching this video has changed the outcome of your life, and in turn the lives of millions of others, because your actions today will be different. Some may be instant tiny things that happen today or this week, but in time what happens today will have a snowball effect on the direction of your life, which in turn can and will have a huge effect on everyone's life around you. But what does all this mean? Well, your life is precious and is the result of billions of events that have led to your existence, and the billions more that will become your future. So go after that project you've always wanted to. Ask that person out, because 10 years down the line you may have started a family with them. And never underestimate the tiny actions you make, because they can have an enormous outcome on not only your life, but potentially the lives of so many people for years to come. So if you ever thought your life doesn't matter, believe me, it really does.
Buckminster Fuller was one of the most famous designers and inventors in the 20th century, who had a particular interest towards improving society with his many inventions and ideas. Spanning more than 5 decades, he developed solutions to human problems in designing technologies that do more with less. During his many years working with machinery, Fuller used his comprehensive problem-solving approach to constructing a modular home that was relatively inexpensive and easy to mass-produce on a large scale for the general population. This was called the Dymaxion house. Fuller was ahead of the curve in understanding during his time that efficiencies must be created in how we develop new technologies in order to prevent a scarcity of resources and limiting negative impacts on the environment. This sustainable way of thinking that Fuller adopted in all of his design work went on to being applied to many other technologies, such as the Dymaxion car, which was a streamlined, free-wheeled vehicle that could make extraordinarily sharp turns, a compact, prefabricated, easily installed Dymaxion bathroom, and Dymaxion deployment units, which were mass-produced houses based on circular grain bins. While Dymaxion deployment units never became popular for civilian housing, they were used during World War II to shelter radar crews in remote locations with severe climates. In the middle of Fuller's life work, Fuller designed and developed one of the most significant constructions he is most well known for, the geodesic dome. This was a lightweight, cost-effective and easy to assemble dome structure, which enclosed more space without intrusive supporting columns that other structures bear. The geodesic dome efficiently distributed stress within the structure, thereby becoming a very strong design with the ability to withstand harsh environments. From this point onwards, Fuller gained a lot of understandings from nature by looking at how nature's geometrical patterns can be applied to the design of structures within human society, and by doing so could create huge advantages and possibilities. Today there are more than 300,000 geodesic domes around the world, ranging from shelters in California and Africa to radar stations in remote locations, as well as geodesic structures on countless children's playgrounds. In the early 1950s, Fuller concentrated lecturing on the benefits of a systems approach to problem solving. He coined the now familiar phrase "spaceship Earth" to describe the integral nature of Earth's living system. Beginning in the late 1960s, Fuller was especially involved in creating World Game, a large-scale simulation and series of workshops he designed that used a large-scale Dymaxion map to help humanity better understand, benefit from, and more efficiently utilise the world's resources. Fuller's philosophy could be best summarised as being a social thinker, believing that humanity's survival is contingent upon how it manages spaceship Earth and the resources it contains, and that creating abundance whilst doing little to no harm to the environment would help to alleviate a lot of the problems seen in the world today. His emphasis on a systems thinking approach shaped a way of thinking that adopted the idea that the world is an interconnected system with interconnected problems, and that a way to solve these problems would be to call upon collective action.
Money laundering allows gangsters, terrorists, and corrupt politicians to profit from their crimes. Transparency campaigners say offshore financial centers make it too easy for criminals to hide their loot and too difficult for the police to catch them. Here's a hypothetical example of how a politician could use the secrecy of tax havens to steal from a developing country rich in natural resources. If you want to move dirty money, then you need a shell company in a tax haven. Our politician chooses the Seychelles, where you can register a new firm online in under 10 minutes for just €690. This company needs directors, so he pays residents in another tax haven, such as the British Virgin Islands, to use their names on all official documents. This practice is completely legal in the UK and its overseas territories. A recent investigation into these nominee directors found a group of just 28 individuals who collectively controlled more than 21,500 companies worldwide. The next step is to set up a corporate bank account somewhere with strict secrecy laws. The crooked politician picks Panama, where the authorities make life very difficult for anyone requesting information. The politician can then use the shell company to open a high street bank account, buy a fleet of supercars, or invest in the prime real estate markets of London, Paris, and New York. Even if the bank questioned how a mere civil servant could afford a Bugatti Veyron, it would be next to impossible to prove he had stolen the money. Offshore tax havens have made sure his name never appeared on a public register. Campaigners say that until these secret jurisdictions become more transparent, corrupt politicians will be able to loot developing countries with little risk of being caught.
Here are the facts. Sometime more than a year before April of 2016, an anonymous source identifying him or herself as John Doe contacted a German paper named the Süddeutsche Zeitung with an extraordinary offer. This source claimed to have access to around 2.6 terabytes of secret data from a Panama-based law firm named Mossack Fonseca, which sold offshore companies around the globe. The source did not want money for this revelatory information, nor did the source want fame. Instead, they would only say they believed the firm was doing real harm to the world and wanted this harm to cease. The German paper accepted the leak. They partnered with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and spent around a year analyzing the documents before going public with the largest leak in human history. So what exactly did they find? Here's where it gets crazy. At the time of this recording, the world is still analyzing this data, and what researchers have found so far is profoundly disturbing. In the documents, which range from the 1970s to 2015, Mossack Fonseca is shown to function, as the German paper notes, as a hub of a global industry led by major banks, legal firms, and asset management companies, secretly stewarding the estates of the world's rich and famous, from politicians, FIFA officials, fraudsters, and drug smugglers, to celebrities and professional athletes. In short, to hide, transfer, and in some cases to clean dirty money. By April 3rd of 2015, the news had reached populations in countries around the planet. Heads of state and industry were implicated, as well as kings. Many of these individuals worked through their relatives, squirreling away cash and, in some cases, circumventing sanctions. Sources traced money to Vladimir Putin, the Prime Minister of Iceland, heads of Chinese government, Middle Eastern royalty, Indian celebrities, and even Jackie Chan. These powerful people worked with Mossack Fonseca to create shell companies in other countries, informally known as tax havens, an act which, in itself, is not inherently illegal. However, journalists note the majority of these operations were designed to hide the identity of the actual owners. In other words, the people hiding the money. Some of these clients are out-and-out criminals, like bank robbers and mafioso. Other shell companies appear to hold bribery money from corrupt officials. In some cases, this means the leaks are proof of illegal financial activity by some of the world's wealthiest groups and individuals. Others think there may be more to the story, however, asking why comparatively few Americans have been named in the leaks so far. Could this be a result of a conspiracy by one group to expose the activities of a geopolitical rival? Does the timing have anything to do with the recent Unaoil scandal? At this point, it's hard to say. Yet as journalists continue to dig and the average citizens of countries around the world begin asking tougher questions about what their leaders do behind the scenes, one thing's becoming abundantly clear. Mossack Fonseca and its over 300,000 clients have something they don't want you to know. And we've just begun to scratch the surface.
The Huffington Post, along with a group called Fairfax Media, they've revealed leaked documents after a 6-month investigation examining the oil industry corruption. This was across 2 continents. Now, the media outlets, they say that they've uncovered billions in money of government contracts that were awarded as a direct result of bribes paid on behalf of companies like Rolls-Royce, Halliburton, Samsung, Hyundai, just to name a few. Now, the reporters that worked on this story, they contend that a Monaco-based family-owned company called Unaoil, they're brokering these bribes in the millions on behalf of corporate giants. Now, Iranian-born Atta Asani, this company was formed in Monaco in 1991. Essentially, he's a middleman taking big money and putting it, going to corrupt smaller countries for oil contracts. You would think that this is a line out of a movie.
Totally.
And the fact that these reporters were able to uncover this, and I just want to give their names because this is just an excellent piece of journalistic work. They're Nick McKenzie, Richard Baker, Michael Batchelard, and Daniel Quinlan from the Huffington Post, along with Fairfax Media. They uncovered the 6 months, countless emails, back and forth. Can you imagine the sting operation that this took?
I think it's great, and honestly, I could easily see this being turned into a film. You know, it's funny you said cinematic quality because, I mean, I could easily see this being turned into a movie. To me, the sinister kind of behind the scenes, the bribery, that's not necessarily a surprise to me, but I feel like hats off to these gentlemen for exposing it.
Money for oil contracts too, that doesn't shock me. What shocks me is that these major corporations, Rolls-Royce for example, Petrofac from Britain, US companies, FMC Technologies, among others, and also Italian giants, they're paying a middleman to broker corrupt oil deals in these small countries. This report, it indicates that Iraqi oil ministers, there's a fixer linked to the Syrian dictator, Bashar al-Assad, alleged dictator, excuse me. Also Libya, Iran. So it's greater than just one place.
Absolutely, but it certainly at the very least highlights this uncertainty that we had. You know, we were told that the oil in Iraq was going to be used for the Iraqi people and to, rebuild the crumbling, society there, but this totally undermines that. And again, not surprising, but I find it fascinating that they were able to go so in depth with the investigation.
Right. Well, the contention is that exactly. That's astounding. 6 months worth of work, 2 media entities, 4 primary journalists at HuffPo. Unaoil, like we've never seen before. We actually have confirmation that this is happening. We always suspected the corrupt global oil dealings were going on, but distributing millions and millions of dollars worth of bribes on behalf of corporate behemoths like the ones that I mentioned. Essentially, this middleman, Atta Asani, and his company. Just really quickly, I want to leave you with this. His company says to integrate Western technology with local capability. Boy, is he doing that.